There's a lot of talk about manifesting your dreams to make them come real. And I suppose you could say it that way. But I wouldn't say manifesting makes it seem as though if you want it badly enough, it'll happen. Whereas I'm a much more practical person than that. If you want something bad enough, you figure out what you're willing to sacrifice to have it. I wanted a quiet life with a garden and animals and nature, and to homeschool my kids. And that's a lot to want. Just manifesting that wasn't going to make it happen. I had to give up. I'm giving up running water. I'm giving up space. I'm giving up a toilet.
There's our toilet.
I'm giving up land ownership, the security of land ownership. I'm giving up my independence in a lot of ways. I'm quite dependent on Laura, Jean, and Garnet. I'm putting my faith in them. But I know it's what I need to give up in order to have a healthy life. And I'm not willing to live a half-healthy life anymore. I've been unhealthy my whole life. And as everyone reminds me, it's only going to get worse. So I need to make my health the utmost priority.
Hey, won't you stay a little bit longer? I'm sorry, didn't mean to, but I heard you cannot undo it. So please stay.
Hi, buddy. It is the 14th of April today. It is unseasonably warm. It's 28 degrees today. A year ago, it was cold and rainy. We had just gone to Toronto to pick up the solar panels, and we went to the Science Center, and it poured rain the whole drive home. It was absolutely like the kind of rain that you're a little bit scared driving in. And then a year ago today, we got the rabbits, which were an early birthday present for Bethany. We had been living here for 2 weeks in the camper, and it had been really cold and unpleasant, and the heat wasn't working properly, and the fridge wasn't working properly, and the solar panels weren't working properly, and I didn't have the hot water heater set up. So life was pretty hard. And I think back over the past year and how proud I am of it, but how hard it was, and how much I was sort of looking forward to this year maybe being a bit easier. My house is built. I don't have to stress so much about that. There's still a lot of work to do on it, but I have a warm place to live in the winter, so I don't have to be stressed about that. But in true form to my life, everything fell apart this week. So today's Friday. On Monday, I had a conversation with the woman who owns this farm, and it seems that they have done a cost-benefit analysis and decided that I am not worth the cost. The amount of work that I have done here is not equivalent to the cost that I have accrued to them, which was pretty heartbreaking to hear. It really came out of the blue for me. Last year they treated me like family, and they raved about how hard I worked and how much I had done. So this year for them to now tell me that Well, I cried. I cried quite a bit on the first day and a little bit on the second day. And now I've kind of come to terms with the fact that we will have to move again. They didn't kick me out. They said I can stay and that they would wait and see how things went. But the thing is, that was the best I could do. That past year, the past year that I spent here, that was the best I could do. I pushed myself to my absolute limit and then pushed myself even further. So if I were to stay, I would have this idea in my head that I wasn't working hard enough, and I would push myself even further than I did last year. I would neglect my health. I would neglect my children. It wouldn't be good for me. So they told me I can stay. They didn't tell me that I had to leave, but I have to leave. I can't stay here with that thought in my mind, because I will burn out. I will burn out if I try any harder than I've already been trying, which is really heartbreaking, because honestly, it wasn't my dream to open a seedling store. I opened a seedling store for them, for this farm. It wasn't my dream to build a tiny house so that I could live off grid. It was something that I did because I needed to do that to live here. So I spent every penny that I had and more to build a tiny house so that I could live here. And now I can't live here anymore. So I'm pretty heartbroken. Not only because I felt a real love and connection to these people and to this place, and so I really feel hurt that they feel that I'm not worth it. But I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. I misjudge people all the time, you know. So I have not handed in my resignation yet. They've just been busy every evening this week, and so there hasn't been the right time. So I think I should be able to catch them tomorrow morning, in which point I will let them know I'm leaving and tell them my plan, my exit strategy, and hopefully they're okay with it. I am scared for sure, but I also know that I'm strong and that I can do hard things. And this move won't be as hard as the last move, because at least I have a house. You know, at least I put my house on wheels and my truck can pull it. So I'm not going to be completely screwed, but I need somewhere else to put my tiny house. That is the big thing. And there's a few possibilities. All of which are problematic. But I'll explain.
But I'm living. No, I'm lost. Cannot be forgiven.
And I've had, that was April. All of April, May, June, July, almost 5 months I've had to roll this around in my head. I still just don't understand it though. I just still don't understand it. So anyways, it didn't really matter. I obviously couldn't stay. I was not, if they felt like I was a drain on them, that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be a drain on anyone. I want to give more than I take. Now, this is where I have to tell the other part of the story that's even harder for me to tell, even though It's the solution to the problem. I'm a stubborn, strong, independent woman, and I want to solve my own problems, and I couldn't solve this one myself. I mean, maybe I could have. I'm sure I could have. But a solution presented itself to me. And that was Don, who lives across the road, invited me to move my tiny house to his property. And the reason he had been inviting me to move my tiny house to his property was because he had, dare I say it, kind of fallen for me. You have seen him before in these videos. This is him helping to get the battery working in my camper when I accidentally made the stupidest mistake of plugging the negative to the positive and the positive to the negative. You can see him again here when we are building the store that I run my seedling market out of. And you can see him again here helping me build my house. He is the guy who measured my roof for 4 hours while I seethed with irritation because I didn't have time for this. He is the one who loaded my 400-pound wood stove into my tiny house and probably gave himself a hernia trying to lift it. And he came back weekend after weekend after weekend to help me build the lofts and the bathroom and install the windows and the doors. After my marriage fell apart, I said never again. So he came every weekend for 6 months and helped me build. And I told him again and again and again and again, I'm not interested in men ever again. And I knew that I loved him as a friend, but I wasn't interested in anything more than that. Until one day when I opened the door in my head and realized that it was probably worth trying. And it was worth trying, actually. And I pretty soon realized that I was in love with him. As much as it pains me to admit, I was wrong. So, when I had that conversation with Lord and realized that I was going to have to leave, his was the shoulder that I cried on. And he immediately, and I mean like 2 days later, plowed me a 40 by 40 foot garden and filled it with 3 dump trailers full of composted cow manure, which is possibly the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me. So in my resignation letter, I explained that I would meet my commitment to do the seedling store for that year, and that by the time the seedling store closed in the first weekend of June, I would have everything off the property, including my house, weather permitting. And that last caveat was really important because my house weighs about 10,000 pounds and we would need the ground to be dry to get it out of there. And well, it was spring, and spring on the farm meant that the ground was often completely impassable. So weeks went by before we were able to get any trucks back there to move any of my stuff. In the meantime, there were so many things on the to-do list that we had no shortage of things to do while we waited for the ground to dry up. I'm taking the scaffolding down to get ready to move the tiny house. It's kind of a bittersweet thing because the scaffolding has been here all winter because I was hoping to get my solar panels up, and it felt like a bit of a failure that I didn't get my solar panels up. But at the same time, it's good that I didn't get the solar panels up because it's a lot less stressful moving the tiny house when there's no solar panels on it. So, taking down the scaffolding, returning it to the guy who lent it to me. Yeah, you can climb on that one. Returning it to the guy who lent it to me, and then and we'll get the solar panels on at some point after it's been moved, hopefully.
I don't want to sit around and wait. Thin skin, I'm underwater. Is this really happening? You stay silent, you don't mind. Happiness or dollar signs to you. What about not stealing anyone's time?
So the store opens today. I'm not ready again, like I wasn't last year. Also, again, because the weather wasn't very good. Also because Laura and Garnet didn't help me at all this year, so it was just me, and thankfully I had Dawn to help me. I made some different choices this year, like I kept all the seedlings that are cold sensitive in the house until today. I'm just bringing them outside for the first time today. And at the end of today, I will take them back into the house because the temperature is still going to drop to 7 overnight tonight. But I think hopefully going forward, I can leave them out because it's not supposed to drop below 10 at night for the next little while. I'm going to be really, really strict about that this year. Last year, I was very much like, oh, I'm sure it'll be okay. I'm sure it'll be okay. And all of the cold sensitive stuff, the growth was stunted and didn't produce. The other thing I'm doing is where I'm keeping the cold sensitive stuff. It will be inside a greenhouse. Inside a greenhouse, you may notice I don't have plastic on my greenhouse yet. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. We're close. It's just been so rainy and cold and windy that we were moving really slow on the greenhouse. But we're close, so hopefully tonight or tomorrow we'll have plastic on the greenhouse. And for 10 minutes and I already have 2 customers.
Laura made a couple of changes too. It was her idea to move the store in from the road a bit so it wouldn't be in the windiest part of the property like last year's store was. She also had the idea for Dawn and I to assemble this greenhouse that she'd been given a few years ago. It was a really good idea, but it was very frustrating for Dawn and I. Many of the pieces were missing, and we don't know how to build a greenhouse, and there were obviously no instructions. So we spent a lot of time on the weekends working on this greenhouse, when what we kind of wanted to be doing was getting me settled into his property. But it did make for a really lovely store.
I don't want to sit around and wait.
Stronger. It would be very easy to hurt a chick.
Thin skin, I'm underwater. Is this really happening?
Ready to move.
You stay silent, you don't mind. Happiness or dollar signs to you. What about not stealing anyone's time?
On your bounce,
Anyone's
please.
time. I vow to always be fearless.
So ever since I handed in my resignation, the farmers here have been supremely nice to me. Which is good, obviously, you know. Some people were concerned they were going to be mean, and I knew they wouldn't be mean. They're just not mean people. Maybe passive aggressive, but that, you know, that's not the case. Although them being very, very nice to me is also really, really hard for me, because, you know, they were nice to me last year and I thought it was genuine, and now they're telling me they felt like I manipulated them. So I don't know what to think, and I don't know how to feel. And so I'm just finding myself just avoiding them because I don't know whether it's genuine or not, their kindness. Because if they really think that I did those things, if they really think that I took advantage of them and took too much money and didn't work hard enough and manipulated them, then how can they be nice to me? You know, how wouldn't they be angry? And I guess even more so, I feel like when I'm being nice to them, when I'm talking to them and I'm being friendly, I feel like I'm a fraud. I'm hyper aware of the fact that they think that I'm manipulative, and I'm very aware of the fact that I am faking friendliness with them right now. I wasn't before, but I am now because I'm just so hurt. But I can't tell them how hurt I am. I can't say how I really feel because I'm not confrontational. I don't want to have a fight. I don't want to have to defend my feelings. I don't want to have to explain my perspective because there's no point. I'm gonna be leaving anyway. So I'm avoiding them as much as I possibly can because I don't know how to talk to them. I'm super self-conscious and I'm really sad, and I would just rather leave as soon as possible and put this whole thing behind me. So my seedling store did awesome its first weekend. On Sunday I did almost $1,000 in sales in one day, which is pretty remarkable considering last year in the whole summer I did $1,700 in sales. So I was really undecided about whether I wanted to continue to do the seedlings after I left here. I never did it because I wanted to do a seedling store. I did it because Laura wanted me to generate an income for the farm, and that was an idea that I had. So I wasn't planning on doing it when I moved across the street, but after Sunday I'm starting to think that maybe I should do it. Maybe it is worth the effort. I have to crunch some numbers though. Looking good, lady. Watch where you're steering. Where are you going? So here I am, building my third garden in 4 years. This is going to be an in-ground garden. What I decided to do was we plowed it about 4 times and we added a lot of 5-year-old cattle manure. And now I'm sort of creating raised beds in the ground by digging out the aisles and pouring it on the rows. And right now I'm covering the rows with some old wood shavings from my chicken coop that have been around for over a year. I don't know if it's gonna work. Everything I do is experimental, which is driving Don crazy because he's used to a very specific garden style, and I just like to experiment and play around with things. So I'm definitely testing him.
push you out. I gotta swim. Nope. Yeah, so they can go back to the prison house. Mills got out. Mills got out. Mills got out. How did you get out?
So one Friday at the end of May, the ground was dry enough that we were able to get Dawn's truck back to my tiny house to move some of my lumber. When Dawn said to me, "Don't panic, but I think we need to move your house today. The ground is dry enough. It's supposed to rain later today. We should move it now while we can." I definitely panicked. I panicked really hard for 3 reasons. Number 1, I designed that house. I am not an architect. I don't have the skills to calculate whether the house is balanced from front to back or right to left, whether there's the right percentage of weight on the tongue compared to the rest of the house. I don't even know the weight of the building. Number 2, I built this house and I built it with screws and not nails. And as I learned after it was already too late, screws are no good for shear pressure when things are moving back and forth, which is exactly the kind of pressure that the walls would have while being moved across uneven, unlevel ground. And number 3, I am moving my house to the property of a man who I have been dating for not even 2 months. After years of trying to figure out how to get out of a relationship, and swearing to myself that I would never again get myself in a position where I felt trapped. And now here I was doing exactly that with a man who absolutely seemed wonderful, but I've been wrong about people before. Not that long ago. So yeah, I was absolutely terrified about the prospect of moving my house. But it was the best option I had, and it was going to happen today. Currently taking everything off the shelves and putting it all on the floor because in about a half an hour we will be moving my tiny house, the whole thing, across the road to Dawn's place. And I'm not excited. Not excited at all about this. This is basically the whole time I was building the tiny house. This was like the scenario that I was hoping I would never have to encounter. And here it is, happening. But I guess I'll clean everything really well when I put it all back up again. Maybe. Holy crap. It's kind of a funny thing packing to move when you're not actually gonna be moving anything. Like, these boxes aren't gonna be lifted. They're just gonna sit here and shake a bit, and then I'll put everything back again when I'm done. So here's one mistake that I made. In my paranoia of the house rolling around when I'm working on it, I put cinder blocks between the dual axles to prevent it from going forward and back. Is it stuck for life? Now, of course, since then, we went through a really mushy spring and everything sunk into the ground. And now the cinder blocks were trapped between the wheels. Just filming my mistakes. It's important to document. We did manage to get them out, but I'm just putting this out there as a lesson for the rest of you to learn from my mistakes. Don't put cinder blocks between the two axles. They have no idea what we're in for. Okay, so for years, I have been filming most of the things that I do. I have reams of footage that I back up in duplicate on 2 separate hard drives because of a lesson that I learned the hard way in Africa when I dropped my hard drive that had all of my footage from the entire trip and it smashed into a million pieces. And now I have 0 footage or photographs from our time in Africa, except for the stuff that has been put on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. So since then, I back up everything on 2 separate hard drives. Despite that, and despite the fact that I filmed the moving of my house with 2 different phones, somehow this is the only footage that I have. And these are the only photographs that I have. Somehow, of all the footage that I have taken over all the years, this is the only thing that I have lost. The most dramatic part of the story that I need to tell, and I lost the footage. So, making lemons out of lemonade, I have, to the best of my ability, recreated what happened when I moved my tiny house from the farm to Dawn's house. I'm starting with this picture of my house, but it's spring now, so I'm adding some trees and some bushes and some fresh green grass and Dawn's truck. We hitch the house on, and to get the tiny house out, Dawn's truck needs to navigate a series of huge ruts that are covered in long grass, which even his 4-wheel drive monster truck struggles to get through. And of course, because it's my luck, at this moment, it starts to rain. Finally, he gets his truck and my creaking, groaning house over the ruts, and they're off across the grass paths so quickly that I can barely catch up. This animation is actually surprisingly similar to the original footage. The only thing missing is my breathless, anxious voice saying, "Oh my God, this is absolutely terrifying," while I run after my lurching house. But it went just fine. The house actually fit along the entire path without us knocking down any trees or having to cut any branches or move any wires. It went so much better than I ever could have imagined. And then I went back to work at the seedling store while Dawn parked my house. And I watched from across the road with my stomach in my throat. Don't hit my car. And there it is. The spot where my house used to be, but is no more here. Holy, look at that. This is beautiful too. It was really sad to be losing the pond, but this is beautiful too. I'm gonna have my veggie garden right outside my house. Look at that. Holy. Really weird looking out the window and seeing a completely different view, because like, it's so familiar inside, and then outside is not at all familiar.
You say take me on a treasure hunt. I long for something new. Have you heard the fairies when they
How you doing up there, Moon?
Oh, I wish it was me.
For the first time in a year and a half. Is that stuff leaving? Is this leaving?
I know I don't yet know it, so I trust you when you say that beauty lives in
So I am now settled at the back of Dawn's 2-acre property, directly across the road from the permaculture farm where I was before. We are still on good terms with the neighbors. I don't think they realize how hurt I am. They might now. But I'm not angry. It was a really beautiful dream. And it was sad to let that dream go. But I'm building something awesome here. And I'm not gonna look back with regret. I was in the right place when I was at their place. And I am still in the right place. And this is just my journey. It's a crazy, unpredictable, wild and adventurous and emotional journey. And like a fool, I shared it all with you on the internet. Let's hope I don't regret it. I believe now the time has come to give you the tour of my house and my garden here at Dawn's property, our little 2-acre homestead in the making. There are a lot of tiny house tours on the internet. They're all beautiful, immaculate, well-designed, and perfect tiny houses. My tiny house is not that kind of tiny house. I built it myself with minimal building experience. It's been both harder and easier than I thought it was gonna be.